Hello and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video, we'll be answering the question, how can I compare using adjectives? So, as adjectives are describing words, they're really handy when we want to compare things. Let's take, for example, this bag is big. The adjective is big, obviously. And just so you realise, it is predicative. It's linking back to the noun bag. Imagine though, this bag is bigger than the other one. I'm now using the adjective bigger. And finally, this bag is the biggest of all the bags in the shop. Biggest is another adjective. But each of these is slightly different and they are comparing in scale the size of the bag. There are three technical names for these adjectives. So there's the absolute. It's the simplest form of adjective. Then we call the next comparative. It compares the adjective against the absolute form. So it's the next step along. And then we have the final, the superlative. And it's used when comparing more than two things, and it's normally used for the most extreme version of the adjective. So which of these three matches to each of these descriptions? Hit pause if you need thinking time. So, how did you get on? Well done if you realised that big is the absolute form of the adjective big. And the comparative form is bigger, because I'm comparing what was big to the next step up. And then the superlative has to be biggest. You can't get bigger than the biggest. So now it's your turn. Make the following absolute adjectives into their comparative and superlative counterparts. Hit pause if you need thinking time, but remember you're looking to use the comparative and then the superlative. So, how did you get on? The comparative of sad is more sad or sadder. The comparative of angry is angrier or more angry. The comparative of new is newer or more new. The comparative of small is smaller. Slow becomes slower. Fast becomes faster. And unusual becomes more unusual. Now let's consider the superlatives. That's the most extreme form of the adjective. So sad becomes saddest. Angry becomes angriest. New becomes newest. Small becomes smallest. Slow becomes slowest. Fast becomes fastest. And interestingly enough, unusual becomes most unusual. So what does comparative even mean? It's comparing something with the base or absolute adjective. The comparative is formed differently depending on how many syllables in the base adjective. This is something we need to remember. If the base adjective has one syllable, then we add the letters ER to the base adjective. So for example, great becomes greater. If the base adjective has three or more syllables, we add more in front of the base adjective. This makes it clearer, and the other versions do not apply otherwise. It wouldn't make sense if we didn't do this. So beautiful becomes more beautiful. You can't be beautifuler. That does not make sense. So if it has two syllables, and this can vary slightly, you have the option of ER or more. So for example, clever becomes more clever or cleverer. This is not straightforward, But please note, it is never, never, ever correct to use both more and So for example, you can't be more cleverer. It was completely wrong to use that. Instead, I'm more clever or cleverer. So what does a superlative mean then? It's the most extreme version of the base adjective. And it's also formed in the similar fashion based on the number of syllables found in the base adjective. So for words with a one syllable, the letters est are added to the base adjective. So great becomes greatest. For base adjectives that have three syllables, the word most is added in front of that base adjective. So beautiful becomes most beautiful. It doesn't become beautifulest. That is not a word. For base adjectives with two syllables, this varies. It could be est or most. Est is added to the end of the base adjective and most is added in front of it. So for example, clever could become most clever or cleverest. Just like it was for comparative, it's never correct to use both most and est in the same, so it would be absolutely wrong to say most cleverest. One or the other is accepted. Now it's your turn. For each of the 5 sentences, decide whether you're dealing with an absolute, comparative or superlative adjective, and then identify it in each of the sentences. Hit pause if you need thinking time. So, the absolute base adjective is hot in this sentence. The best shop is over there. Best is a superlative. A slower creature than you is a snail. That seems accurate. The person has used a comparative by using the adjective slower. Absolute. There are 2 absolute adjectives in this sentence. Angry and old. And finally, I like juicier mangoes. Makes sense. Juicier is a comparative. Remember, you need to be able to compare in life, so you need to be able to use the correct forms of absolute, comparative and superlative. It's worth looking over again the rules of how many syllables the base adjective having influencing your future understanding of how to create the comparative and superlative and never get it wrong in your own writing. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?